Joan Harper was a 70-year-old retired caregiver living alone in a small town in Ohio. She spent her days tending a tiny garden behind her porch, watering plants one by one, as if caring for the memories she could no longer share with anyone. Her son Mark lived only 30 minutes away, but it felt like he lived on another planet because he rarely visited unless he needed something. Still, Joan loved him with every quiet breath she took, believing a mother heart never stops hoping. Thanksgiving was coming soon, and Joan spent her mornings planning the meal, choosing ingredients, polishing her old wooden table, imagining laughter filling her lonely home. But this year Mark insisted the dinner be held at his house, saying it was better for everyone, and Joan agreed because she wanted to feel included even if the feeling was thin and fragile. She woke early the holiday morning dressed in her soft blue sweater, brushed her silver hair, and carried a homemade apple pie she baked with steady hands trained by years of making simple joys. On the drive she whispered small prayers, asking for kindness, asking for warmth, asking for a moment where her family felt whole again. When she walked in, the house smelled of turkey and spices, the kind of scent that wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket, but the warmth did not last long. Mark barely looked at her as he walked past, taking the pie from her hands and placing it aside like an afterthought. His wife Lisa stood by the counter, scrolling on her phone, barely acknowledging Joan's presence. Joan tried to ignore the hollow sting and smiled softly, trying to help with the meal, but every attempt was brushed away. She asked if anyone needed help preparing the table, but Mark told her she always got in the way. The words sliced softly yet sharply like paper cuts she pretended not to feel. When guests arrived, the house filled with chatter and noise, but Joan felt invisible, as if she were a shadow moving quietly from corner to corner. During dinner someone joked about elders forgetting things, and Mark laughed, pointing toward Joan as if her age was entertainment. The table roared with laughter while Joan lowered her eyes and forced herself to breathe steady. Inside her chest something cracked, a tiny quiet break. But she stayed silent because she had spent a lifetime swallowing pain and calling it patience. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room, Joan sat on a small chair near the window, watching cold November air fog the glass. She thought about how giving love did not always mean receiving love, and how some children forget the hands that once held them steady. But she did not speak, she simply listened to distant laughter. Later that night, when she finally returned home, the house felt too quiet, but also strangely peaceful. She stood in her kitchen, staring at the empty counter where her apple pie would have sat if the meal had been in her own home. And in that silence, something new stirred inside her. Not anger, not revenge, but a calm, steady realization that she could no longer let herself be treated like an old, forgotten story. She knew something had to change. And she knew the change would come from silence stronger than any shouted words. The next morning Joan woke with a quiet heaviness wrapped around her chest like a cold winter scarf. She brewed a small pot of coffee and sat near the window, watching soft gray clouds drift across the sky as if carrying her thoughts with them. The hurt from the night before was still fresh, but in the calm silence of her home she found herself thinking not about the pain, but about the reasons she had allowed it to repeat year after year. She remembered birthdays she spent alone, waiting for a phone call that arrived too late or never arrived at all. She remembered times Mark asked for money, and she gave it even when it meant stretching groceries for 2 weeks. She remembered moments she needed him to simply sit with her, but he was always too busy, too tired, or too distracted. Yet she kept loving him because being a mother meant loving even when it hurt. But now she realized something else: being a mother also meant protecting yourself when the hurt became too heavy. She stood slowly and walked across her small living room, touching the framed photographs on the wall, each a memory from another time. There was a picture of Mark at age 6 holding a homemade kite. There was one of his first day of high school. There was one of him graduating from the academy he once dreamed of joining. She had been so proud, then the kind of pride that fills your lungs until breathing feels like joy. But now those memories carried a bittersweet ache. She took a deep breath and whispered a soft promise to herself that she would no longer let anyone dim her light, not even the son she loved more than anything. She made a warm breakfast for herself, something she rarely did, and allowed the small act to feel like care. After cleaning up, she put on her coat and stepped outside, letting the crisp November air brush against her cheeks. She walked down the road toward the community center, where she sometimes volunteered, sorting food donations or helping seniors with small tasks. When she arrived, her friend Marlene greeted her with a warm smile, a smile so sincere it made Joan's chest loosen for the first time since Thanksgiving. They worked side by side, packing boxes of canned goods, talking about simple things like weather and holiday decorations. Marlene noticed Joan's quiet mood and gently asked if everything was all right. Joan hesitated, then finally shared a small piece of the truth, not everything, just enough to let out a little of the weight. Marlene listened with patient eyes and a soft, understanding nod. She told Joan she deserved respect, she deserved kindness, she deserved to feel valued. Those words settled in Joan's heart like warm soup on a winter night. On the walk home she felt lighter, but she also felt something stirring inside her, a new sense of direction, a sense that life was not over, that she still had choices, she still had power. She reached her porch, dipped her hands into the flower pots, and felt the soil crumble between her fingers, grounding her in the now. She whispered to herself that change begins quietly. And she knew her silence from this point forward would not be weakness but strength. The following week Joan kept to herself, moving gently through her daily routines, but with a new awareness settling inside her like a seed beginning to sprout. She no longer waited near her phone for Mark messages, and she no longer replayed the unkind moments from Thanksgiving in her mind. Instead she focused on things she had long neglected: the soft-worn books on her shelf, the letters she once wrote but never mailed, the old quilt she had started stitching years ago. Each small task felt like reclaiming a part of herself, a part she had given away piece by piece over the years. One cold afternoon she drove to the town library, a place she once visited every week when she worked as a caregiver. She loved the quiet aisles, the soft glow of warm lights, and the comforting scent of old pages carrying stories older than her own. She wandered through the shelves until she found a book about life transitions, written by a woman who had rebuilt her life after years of family disappointment. Joan sat by the window, flipping through the pages, each line echoing thoughts she had tucked away in her heart. She realized she was not alone in her pain. Countless others had been pushed aside by the very people they loved the most. She carried the book home and read it late into the night, letting the words guide her. The next morning she woke with clarity. She would no longer chase the love that hurt her. She would build a life where her worth was not measured by how much she sacrificed. She began making small changes. She rearranged her living room, donated old belongings, and fixed the loose cabinet hinge that had bothered her for months. While sorting through a box of old papers, she found a binder filled with certificates from her caregiving work awards she had forgotten she earned. Reading them made her realize she had spent decades giving her best to others, yet she had never given that same dedication to herself. She touched the certificates with gentle fingers and decided she would apply for part-time caregiving again, not because she needed the money, but because helping others made her feel alive. Later that week she met with a coordinator at a senior home and was offered a flexible position assisting residents with daily activities. The moment she stepped into the warm, cheerful building, she felt a sense of belonging. The staff greeted her with respect, the residents smiled at her kindly, and she felt seen in ways she had not felt in years. As she drove home she felt something blooming in her chest, a feeling she had long forgotten: hope. She realized she was finally stepping into a new chapter, one she was writing for herself, not for her son, not for anyone else. A chapter where silence did not mean suppression but peace. A chapter where she chose her own worth. A few days later Joan noticed several missed calls from Mark on her phone, but she did not return them. The old version of herself would have rushed to call back, apologizing for reasons she did not even understand, but now she simply let the calls sit there untouched. Instead she took a long walk through the neighborhood, her shoes crunching over scattered leaves, the cool air refreshing her tired spirit. She passed a small cafe she had not visited in years and decided to step inside. The warm smells of fresh bread and cinnamon greeted her, and she chose a small table by the window. She ordered tea and watched people pass by, each living their own quiet stories. She felt peaceful. She felt present. She felt free. While sipping her tea, she overheard a young couple discussing how family can be both a blessing and a burden. Their conversation echoed through her thoughts, as if the universe was reminding her of truths she already knew. When she returned home, she saw a long message from Mark asking for help with a bill he claimed he forgot to pay, insisting he needed it urgently. Joan stared at the phone, her thumb hovering above the screen. A familiar pull tugged at her heart, the old instinct to fix everything to save him, even when he never saved her. But she did not move. Instead she set the phone down, walked into the kitchen, and cooked herself a warm meal, letting the quiet strength inside her guide every step. Hours later she picked up the phone and replied with a simple message saying she could not help. No explanation. No apology. Just truth. The next morning he sent another message filled with frustration, saying she always made things harder for him. She read it once, then placed the phone face down. For the first time she did not feel guilty. She felt strong. She spent the afternoon helping a resident at the senior home paint small ceramic ornaments for the holiday season. Their laughter echoed gently through the activity room, and for a moment she felt like she was part of something beautiful, something meaningful. When she returned home, she lit a candle near her living room window and sat quietly watching the soft flame dance. She felt calm. She felt grounded. She felt proud. She was learning to choose herself one quiet step at a time. One evening as Joan left the senior home, she saw Mark waiting near her driveway, his arms crossed and his expression tight. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she kept walking, her steps steady. When she reached him, he immediately demanded to know why she refused to help him, why she acted distant, why she changed. Joan listened quietly, letting his frustrations spill out like a storm she had weathered many times before. But this time she was not the same. She told him softly that she was tired of being treated like a resource instead of a mother, tired of being respected only when he needed something. Mark scoffed, saying she was being dramatic, saying family was supposed to help each other. Joan nodded and told him helping each other went both ways. Her voice was calm, steady, almost peaceful. Mark tried guilt, he tried anger, he tried blame, but none of it shook her. She stood tall, her hands warm inside her coat pockets, her heart steady. Finally he muttered that she was selfish, then stormed off, leaving her alone in the quiet evening air. But she did not crumble. She did not cry. She simply breathed. She walked inside her house, brewed a cup of herbal tea, and sat on her favorite chair, letting the silence wrap around her like a soft blanket. She knew this moment marked a turning point, the moment she finally drew a line, the moment she chose dignity over fear. In the days that followed, she felt lighter, clearer, more herself. She poured her energy into her work at the senior home, helping the residents decorate their rooms with garlands and small twinkling lights. Their gratitude warmed her heart in ways her son never had. She realized that family could be the people you chose, the people who valued your kindness, not the ones who drained you. She began planning a small holiday dinner, not with Mark, but with the friends she made at the center, and with Marlene, who had become like a sister to her. For the first time in years, she looked forward to the holidays, not with hope for her son, but with joy for herself. She understood now that healing was not loud. Healing was quiet. Healing was choosing peace. 2 weeks passed and winter slowly settled around the small Ohio town, with quiet flakes drifting from the sky like soft whispers falling onto rooftops and roads. Joan spent her days between the senior home and her own cozy house, feeling a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. The residents adored her gentle spirit and warm patience, and their appreciation filled a space inside her that had long been empty. She helped one resident write a letter to her grandchildren, helped another organize old photo albums, and listened to countless stories about love and loss and resilience. These moments reminded her that she was still needed, still valued, still capable of giving joy without losing herself. One afternoon, while helping a resident named Helen bake ginger cookies, Joan received another message from Mark, asking if she could come over to help him with some paperwork. Helen noticed the change in Joan's expression and asked if she was all right. Joan explained briefly about her strained relationship with her son, and how he usually contacted her only when he needed something. Helen nodded with understanding eyes and said something that wrapped around Joan's heart like a warm scarf. She said that sometimes family is not defined by blood, but by the people who treat your soul gently. Those words stayed with Joan. Later, when she returned home, she looked at the message again, but she did not reply. She placed her phone on the counter, made herself a warm bowl of soup, and sat near the window watching the snow fall heavier and heavier like a fresh start, covering everything. She thought about how far she had come, how she had gone from silent suffering to quiet strength. She had stopped chasing approval and started choosing peace. She knew Mark would eventually realize she was no longer the same predictable mother who said yes to everything, but she also knew he might never understand why she changed. That night she lit a candle, placed it near the framed photo of herself at age 30 holding newborn Mark, and whispered softly that she hoped he would someday value love instead of using it. But she also whispered that she would not lose herself waiting for that day. She wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders and fell asleep on the couch, feeling safer than she had in years. Her heart was healing slowly and quietly, like a wound finally allowed to breathe. As Christmas approached, the senior home grew lively with decorations, paper snowflakes handmade by residents, and soft music drifting through the halls. Joan felt a deep warmth helping the residents prepare small gifts for their families. They tied ribbons around little ornaments, they crafted painted bright colors onto small boxes, and folded handmade cards filled with shaky but heartfelt handwriting. Joan felt honored to be part of their moments of joy. One afternoon, the staff held a small celebration with cookies, hot cocoa, and tiny lights strung across the room. They asked Joan to join, and she did, sitting beside residents who had become her new family. They laughed, shared memories, and teased each other gently, and for the first time in a long time, Joan felt surrounded by genuine affection. Meanwhile, Mark continued sending messages, some asking for help, some complaining. She ignored him, some accusing her of being cold. But Joan no longer felt pulled by them. She replied only when necessary, and with calm, simple answers. She no longer explained herself. She no longer apologized. She no longer begged for understanding. This new version of herself felt steady like a tree that had finally grown deep roots after years of standing in weak soil. On Christmas Eve, Joan hosted a small dinner at her home, inviting Marlene and 2 residents who had no family nearby. She cooked a warm meal, decorated her living room with soft candles, and placed a small pine wreath on her table. The night was filled with gentle laughter, light stories, and quiet comfort. One of the residents touched her hand and said she had the kindness of someone who heals hearts. Joan's eyes softened with gratitude. As they left that night, she felt her house glow with a new energy, not from lights or decorations, but from the presence of people who truly cared for her. Later, when she checked her phone, she saw another message from Mark complaining that she did not invite him. She stared at the screen for a moment, then turned it off. She realized she no longer felt guilty. She no longer felt scared. She finally understood that protecting her heart was not betrayal. It was survival. And survival was a form of quiet revenge, a kind that needed no shouting and no confrontation. 2 weeks passed and winter slowly settled around the small Ohio town, with quiet flakes drifting from the sky like soft whispers falling onto rooftops and roads. Joan spent her days between the senior home and her own cozy house, feeling a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. The residents adored her gentle spirit and warm patience, and their appreciation filled a space inside her that had long been empty. She helped one resident write a letter to her grandchildren, helped another organize old photo albums, and listened to countless stories about love and loss and resilience. These moments reminded her that she was still needed, still valued, still capable of giving joy without losing herself. One afternoon, while helping a resident named Helen bake ginger cookies, Joan received another message from Mark, asking if she could come over to help him with some paperwork. Helen noticed the change in Joan's expression and asked if she was all right. Joan explained briefly about her strained relationship with her son and how he usually contacted her only when he needed something. Helen nodded with understanding eyes and said something that wrapped around Joan's heart like a warm scarf. She said that sometimes family is not defined by blood, but by the people who treat your soul gently. Those words stayed with Joan. Later, when she returned home, she looked at the message again, but she did not reply. She placed her phone on the counter, made herself a warm bowl of soup, and sat near the window watching the snow fall heavier and heavier like a fresh start, covering everything. She thought about how far she had come, how she had gone from silent suffering to quiet strength. She had stopped chasing approval and started choosing peace. She knew Mark would eventually realize she was no longer the same predictable mother who said yes to everything, but she also knew he might never understand why she changed. That night she lit a candle, placed it near the framed photo of herself at age 30 holding newborn Mark, and whispered softly that she hoped he would someday value love instead of using it. But she also whispered that she would not lose herself waiting for that day. She wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders and fell asleep on the couch, feeling safer than she had in years. Her heart was healing slowly and quietly, like a wound finally allowed to breathe. She knew she would never again lose herself to anyone, not even family. She had reclaimed her voice. She had reclaimed her peace. And she had rewritten her story, not through shouting or revenge, but through dignity and silence. Her journey stood as a reminder that the quietest justice is often the strongest. And as she sat on her porch watching the warm evening light settle over her blooming garden, she felt a deep, unshakable peace. A peace she had earned. A peace she deserved. A peace she would never let go.